It's easy to forget the City of London's deep history when walking between glistening glass tower blocks. But fragments of a dark and distant past remain. Join City AM as we dive into London's darkest depths and uncover the secrets of a mysterious Roman cult. As London was being rebuilt following the destruction of the Second World War, a remarkable new discovery was made. Construction workers on the Walbrook uncovered ancient ruins in 1954. At first, they thought it was an early Christian church, but it was a temple dedicated to a much darker and much stranger cult. As the news of the discovery spread, thousands of people queued to see London's latest attraction. But you'll notice that there aren't any Roman ruins on the Walbrook anymore. Since 2012, the ruins have been underneath Bloomberg's European headquarters on Queen Victoria Street, close to the temple's original position.
I'm Helen Childs and I work for the Bloomberg Corporate Philanthropy. I have the great privilege of running London Mithraeum Bloomberg Space, and I was also part of the project team developing the site. Part of the look of Mithras, he was easily identified by his conical cap, and also that is the direction that his eyes were looking as well. It was on the last day of the excavation, so they found the temple outline, but they didn't know who the temple was dedicated to, and it was on the last day of the excavation that they actually uncovered the head, and then they knew that it was a temple of Mithras.
The Mithras worship by the Romans is thought to have roots in the Persian god Mithra, who was one of the most important Persian deities. It's thought that the Romans took on some of the legends and iconography associated with the Persian god, but created new forms of ritual and worship to suit their own purposes. The cult of Mithras flourished between the 1st and the 4th century AD. Mithras was particularly popular with soldiers, meaning the temples were very common in frontier areas. The remains of 10 temples have been found in Roman Britain alone. It was for many years a major competitor to early Christianity. To see the ruins of a temple and learn about the strange cult of Mithras, you have to go into the cellar of Bloomberg's offices.
So I'm Sophie Jackson. I work for MOLA, Museum of London Archeology, and I was very lucky to be the project manager for the excavation and the reconstruction here.
So could you just tell us something about what we're looking at, what the space would have been like 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, sure. Well, what we're looking at is the remains of the temple that was found here in 1954. You can see it's got a sort of central section, which we call the nave, and then 2 side aisles. And what would have happened, we think most of the sort of rituals would have happened in the central section.
Okay.
And then the worshippers would have been sitting in the side aisles, all looking forward towards a big sculpture of Mithras.
How did they worship Mithras?
Well, that's a really tricky question because it was a secret mystery cult and you had to be initiated into it, and nobody wrote anything down about what actually happened. So we've had to go with archaeological clues and sort of bits of inscriptions and so on. But what we think happened when people were initiated into the different stages in the cult, there were 7 grades. So we think there are different initiation ceremonies for each one. There would have almost certainly been some chanting, some sacrifices, not of bulls or anything large, but probably chickens and small things. But there would have also been feasting going on in there. I mean, this was a cult which was about really serious spiritual things, but also about networking.
And who would have been the people who were worshipping here?
Well, they would have been merchants, civil servants, and members of the military, all men, we think, or well, pretty certain actually it was all male cult, but typically men who were moving around the empire doing business. Mithras was a god who was equated with trust and contracts and honour. It was quite a good one to have if you were doing business deals.
Very appropriate for the City of London.
It is very appropriate. This is the best preserved, temple of Mithras found in Northern Europe, and it's very appropriate that it was found in the City of London.
So do we know much about what followers of Mithras would have actually believed?
We don't know for sure, but we have sort of clues. We think joining this cult gave you a different experience of sort of Roman god than the other, traditional gods. It was a much more personal relationship. One of my colleagues once described it as the other gods a bit like, the tax collectors. You have to pay them your dues, but you don't want them to actually visit or get involved in your life. Whereas with Mithras, you did want that personal connection. And Mithraism arrives in the Roman world at the same time as Christianity, and they're both very similar in that way. We think in the different stages of initiation, something was revealed, possibly about creation, about your place in the universe, perhaps what it was giving people. In terms of belief, the worshippers would have fallen within the whole general Roman religious world.
According to the legends, Mithras was not simply born. He emerged from the rock with a torch in one hand and a knife in the other. But that's not the most important part of his legend. At the centre of every temple dedicated to Mithras was a tauroctony. These images are particularly important for helping us understand the cult, given that there was nothing written down by its celebrants.
It's the iconic image, and it must symbolise what the whole cult is about. Mithras is killing the bull, perhaps bringing life and creation into the world. Some of the imagery that would have been associated with this may have included signs of the zodiac, which brings the whole issue of the cosmos and, our place in it.
How was the cult of Mithras seen at the time?
Well, it went in and out of fashion or acceptability, but most of the time it was seen as a sort of fairly positive force. I don't think it was seen as a sort of dark or dangerous cult. And when the excavation happened here in the 1950s, after the temple went out of use, presumably the Mithraeus or the next users actually buried a whole load of sculptures under the floor. And those included the traditional sort of Roman pantheon of gods. There were Mercury, Minerva, gods associated with the River Thames. And that's an indication that Mithras was part of the general religious world.
And what happened to the temple? It clearly ended up as a ruin underneath the City of London, but when did it stop being used and why?
We know from dating evidence that it was built in about 250 AD, about 200 years after Roman London was founded. And then it lasted about 80 years as a temple to Mithras. It was built on rather dodgy ground, and it was remodelled and reused for another 30, 40 years, possibly as a temple to Bacchus. Even more drinking and wine going on.
So it wasn't actually a temple to Mithras for that long?
What's really interesting is on the excavation for the Bloomberg building and from other work in the area, some small finds have been found which are earlier than this building, which suggests there may possibly have been a temple to Mithras here before this building.
Okay, so it's a popular site. So what would a visitor get that we're not getting now?
The exhibition designers wanted people to get a sense of what it might have been like to be in a Mithraeum. A bit mysterious. When you come in, the lights are down, and then there's a moment of pause, and then some sounds start, and it's the sort of whispery sounds of, wind and time passing. Then we have the sounds of people coming into the temple, sitting down, and then chanting starting. And that's one of the few bits of text that exists which help to inform the experience here. It's quite a special experience, so you get this sense of the building sort of appearing and sort of vaguely disappearing in front of you. It's really, really special and very, contemplative. You sense the eons passing.
The Mithraeum is the best example of London's deep history, hidden beneath its streets. But whether they've been found or not, every street has secrets under its pavement. One just needs to know where to look. Want to learn more about the secrets and hidden history of London? Check out our video about the Monument and Tower Bridge by clicking here or here.